All right, today's project is taking cuttings. So we're going to take this long vine growing on this very healthy Nepenthes red leopard, and we're going to remove it, cut it into sections, and turn it into cloned plants. So bear with me, I'm trying out a new hands-free phone holder today. Now, let's see, our needed items for this project are 3-inch pots, baggies, scissors, clippers, rubber bands, water, and of course sphagnum, moss, and perlite for our media. Now my favorite sphagnum to use is this brand here. It's by Best Grow, New Zealand long fiber sphagnum. It is the best quality in my opinion. Now, some of you may have gotten a plant that came in peat, which kind of resembles soil. It's the same thing as sphagnum. It's usually made in Canada, this brand, and it's just really chopped up super duper fine. It can be used, however, it's not my favorite. Nepenthes do like a more loomy, airy soil, so this is preferred. If you have to use peat, that's fine. Just be sure to use extra perlite and don't water as often because this tends to be super mushy and wet. And this is the perlite. As a matter of fact, we're going to add a little extra perlite to our pot here because I didn't put enough in to begin with. So we're just going to stir that around while we take our cutting. Try not to breathe this stuff. It's really not good. And I usually have my gloves on. I have them ready here. And I'll put them on when we pot. It's best to wear gloves when dealing with moss. Especially if you're potting up cuttings and seedlings. You know, you want everything to be as sterile as possible. And this can be microwaved for 3 minutes. You do it a minute at a time and toss it around. And then, of course, let it cool completely before you use. That's how you sterilize long fiber sphagnum. So let me get this mess out of the way here. And let's take a look at our red leopard plant. So this guy's about 8 years old. And it currently has 3 growth points. I'm sorry, I'm having to adjust this new holder again. There we go. So we have one here. Another growth point hiding under the pot there. And then, of course, we have this big vine here growing. So we are going to get our clippers out. And we're going to give these just a quick wash with a tiny bit of alcohol here, real quick. Okay, guys, you're going to have to forgive me. Through the power of video, you won't have seen this. I finished recording this whole video. Show you, our vine is removed, but somehow, after I disinfected our utensils here, the whole thing recorded without sound. So we're going to continue this video, but now we're going to do it with this Ventricosa Ramspina, aka Black Knight, by Sam Esty. So let's do this. Continuing on, when you're cutting from a vine, this is cool. So when your plant grows, you notice it's got these little leaves and small notches between. Well, as it starts to vine, the spacing between leaves gets to be a little bit more. And I'll show you when we cut this off how with the lower ones we're going to do 2 node cuttings, and the ones higher we're going to do single node cuttings. And I'll explain the nodes in a minute, but first I want to leave these 2 healthy pitchers on here. So I'm going to cut right about, you can see, so I'm going to cut right in the middle. That leaf there, that leaf there, I want to cut right here. You don't want to cut too close to either leaf because you have dormant growth nodes right here. Above each leaf there is a dormant node. So if you cut too close to the leaf, you'll damage that dormant node. And if you cut too close to the one above it, you're not going to have enough space to, you want plenty of space for rooting. So anyway, we're going to cut this right in the center here. Right, like, there we go. And I'm going to remove this from the orchid stake here. All right. So here's what we've got to work with. And like I said, you can see closer to the bottom of the plant where the leaves grow pretty close together. And then as the plant starts to vine, you get these wider spacings between. So you can take single node cuttings or double node cuttings. What's the difference? All right. Well, each hidden dormant node, as we said, is right here above the leaf. So when you take a single node cutting, you've only got one chance for it to activate and your plant to thrive. If that node does not activate, the whole thing is going to die. So as you're starting out and just learning, I highly suggest doing 2 node cuttings. So we're going to take this bottom half where they're closer together, and we're going to cut them with 2 nodes each. So count the leaves. 1 leaf, 2 leaf. Here's where we want to cut. And we want to cut it right in between the 2. Very gentle here. Not too close to either leaf. Right in the center. And we're going to do it again. So count your leaves. 1, 2. Right in the center. Cut. Now let's see. These are getting a little spaced apart. So we could probably turn these 3 into 3 separate plants. And I'll show you how to do that. So we're just going to cut these single nodes. Ready? Right in the center. Cut. Right in the center between the 2 leaves. Cut. So we'll set these single nodes over here. And we've got our 2 double nodes right here. So when you're taking cuttings, you have to remove, you have these 2 nodes, you have to remove the lower leaf completely. So we're just going to snip that off. Okay, so we remove the lower leaf completely. Why do we do that? Because this is where the roots are going to form. Now, we're going to remove the top leaf halfway. Why do we do that? Because Nepenthes lose a lot of oxygen through their leaves. We want all that energy and oxygen to stay in the plant so it will produce roots. And it will put that inactive node, that dormant node, will become active. So now we're going to pot this little guy up. We put a little bit of moss in the bottom. And you want to keep that moss kind of, you don't want to overstuff the pot. Overstuffing leads to rot issues. So we want to lightly pack this guy in here. Now, that leaf should be about the top of the pot. And you don't want to cover up that dormant node. So make sure he's not all covered up in moss. Okay? Just like that. Now we're just going to set him over here temporarily. And we're going to go to the second one. Okay, so we have a 2-node section of vine. First thing we're going to do is completely remove the lower leaf. Now, why do we do this? Because this is where the roots are going to form. Then we're going to take that second leaf, the top leaf, and the vine and the pitcher plant that's attached, and sadly we are going to remove it halfway. Because Nepenthes lose a lot of oxygen through the leaves. we're going to need that oxygen. We're going to need all that energy to produce roots and activate that dormant node. Now we're going to take our little 3-inch pot and we're going to fill it up just enough to where the bottom of our vine will sit right on top of the moss. You want that leaf to reach the top of your pot here and just sticking out the side. So once you've got that good position, then you finish putting in the moss. It's very important not to overstuff. If you overstuff, it will lead to root rotting issues later on. So you want it to have plenty of moss but not be crammed in there. And I'll show you how to test if you've crammed too much in there here in a second when we water it. All right, so there's another 2 node. We're just going to set that over here for now. We'll come back to it in a minute. Now let's go back to our single nodes. So here we go, single node. What are we going to do? We're going to remove that leaf halfway. And I'm also going to show you a little trick here in a second that you can... Here we go. So now let's, once again, put some moss in the bottom of our pot. Eyeball it, just enough moss to where the leaf will stick out the top. Remember not to overstuff, don't cram. Now, you can take orchid ties. They're the like metal wire ones that have rubber coating. Or if you're in a pinch, a bread tie will work too. But I take these orchid spikes, or like I said, a bread tie in a pinch, cover them in half, and you can use that to go over your leaf and push down in your moss to hold your leaf in place so it doesn't wiggle. It's important that we want him to stay still, because if he starts to grow roots but then he's moving around a lot, it could damage or actually remove those new delicate roots. So I'm going to put that little orchid spike in there to hold him in place. We'll set him aside. Now with our last one, actually we have 2 left, yay. All right, with this one, once again, we're going to cut that top leaf in half, but this time we're going to try this little trick my friend has been doing. Now he roots in water, not in moss, but its principle should work for us. I haven't had very much success growing in water. I prefer to root in moss. So we're going to take a knife, razor blade, something sharp, disinfected, and we're going to cut about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch slit in our vine. And then we're going to take a section of toothpick and slide it in our cut to open that up. See? And that opens that up in there, giving us more space for roots to form. Whew. All right. And then we're just going to pot him up the same way we pot up all the other ones. Just fill it up with moss. Place our little guy in there. And tuck him in. Now remember, don't cover up that growth node where the vine meets the leaf. We want that nice and clear so that growth node doesn't have anything obstructing him when he pops out. And if you need to, grab a tie to securely hold him in. Okay, so now that we have all those little guys potted up, our next step is to make sure that we have not overfilled them with moss, stuffed them too tightly. So you're just going to take your distilled water or rainwater and you're going to pour it over the pot. Now what you're looking for is that it runs out of the pot. If it pools around the top and water sits without going straight through, then chances are you've got it too tight and should repot it a little looser. So that's what you want. Can you see the water, how it starts to pool on top, but then it just flows right on through. Just like that. Okay, now while those are draining for a second, we'll step over here and get started on our next step. Okay, next thing you're going to do is take a baggie, open it up and blow in it. It's easier to get it to open in a minute if you blow on it first. So you're going to cut the zippy lock off the top of it. We're going to take one of our plants and we're going to carefully slide the baggie over it, and we're going to secure it with a rubber band. Now you want to secure it right around the middle of the pot. You do not ever want to cover up the holes. Remember, Nepenthes need very, very well draining plastic pots. Resin pots are fine. No terracotta, no clay. Fired or glazed, as long as it's completely glazed, then that's okay. So, keeping the bottom open, secure rubber band around the center of the pot. Then you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut a corner off of each side here. And about a penny size cut off of each corner is fine. We need circulation in there. We want that humidity, but we still want circulation. We do not want our Nepenthes to have mildew or mold issues. Now, this is ready to go. You can set it in a south or west facing window. It will take 3 to 5 months for it to root. Now, what you're going to see is that growth node will activate, okay? And once it activates, here, I've got some over here to show you. Once it activates, it'll grow a new leaf. It'll probably be small. Your first leaf will look something like that. Here's the half leaf that we cut. And there's the section of the vine where it was cut. Now that's the first leaf. This is the second leaf. And of course there's the growth point. This right here took, about 3 months, 4 months for it to look like this now. Once you get a couple of leaves like this, you notice I just took the bag off the top of that. So now that he's got 2 leaves, 1 full-grown leaf, I'm going to wait until he has 1 or 2 more leaves. Okay? Then I'll remove the bag completely. But in the meantime, once he gets these first couple of leaves, after that, you can start cutting bigger holes out of the sides of the bag. See how I've cut this one? This is no longer penny size. It's about the size of a quarter now. So once it has a couple leaves, you can start cutting each corner a little bit bigger. You can do that every week or so until you have 3 or 4 new leaves, then remove the bag completely. Now, something else that's very important. You're not going to need to water these as often with the bag on. I notice a lot of people get into mildew issues with this. The bag is 100% safe. It's great. I use it all the time. As a matter of fact, you can see over there I have 23 new arrivals from Sri Lanka. They're probably were over in Borneo about a month or so ago. They came as extra small plants, and I bagged up each and every one of them. So this technique also works for small, extra small, and sickly plants, not just for cuttings. So once you bag it up, make sure you cut those holes in it. Do not over water. I water these guys, my regular Nepenthes plants, 2 or 3 times a week. With the bag on, I only water once a week or sometimes once every 2 weeks. So you're not going to need to water as much. You don't want it to dry out. You want it to stay very moist, but that bag will hold in that moisture, so watering is not needed as often. However, do make sure it does not dry out. Once you have 2 new leaves, start cutting the bag corners a little bit bigger every week or so until it's time to remove the bag completely. I hope this has helped. I'm thinking I've covered everything. Oh, I did want to show you. Now, so where we removed this vine from this plant, this node right here is going to activate, and the plant is just going to continue on growing. So it will not miss a beat here. It might take it a month or so for that node to activate and for it to continue, but it will continue. And this is what that looks like. So you can see here we have this ventrata, and it had a nice, whoops, sorry, my camera was in the wrong spot. So you have this ventrata here, nice healthy little guy, and it had a decent sized vine as well, and it was cut. You can see right there where it was cut. And we removed that vine and made cuttings, and then the new growth node activated right there, and it has grown this nice section right there from that growth node. So you can't even tell. And that's what this will look like in a couple of months. You won't even be able to tell we've taken that cutting. I hope this has helped. I don't think I've forgotten anything. Join us next time where we will be repotting Nepenthes and examining Nepenthes root systems. Thanks for joining us, and happy growing!